final 4 minutes of the game. It was rough to watch the rest of it, but win's a win. I watched more NFL football this weekend than I have all season long.
I'm proud of you.
And if you put it all together, it was probably like 30 minutes, but that's still more. I have some kind of knowledge about the games, so that's good.
Yep.
But I think other than the Browns, which we'll get into, I wasn't really too surprised with how the rest of the weekend went. I thought Buffalo would have a bigger win over Indianapolis, but hey, credit to the Colts. They stuck in there and almost finished the job, so yeah.
Yeah, I went into this weekend thinking, you know what? It could be. I know it's not very likely, but it could be the last time we see Phillip Rivers, Tom Brady, Drew Brees, Ben Roethlisberger all play in the NFL.
Yeah, at the same time.
Pretty wild, right? Yeah, at the same time.
I would think that, I would find it hard in terms of averages that all four of those guys retire at the end of this year. That just seems like a lot of talent to leave all at once. It doesn't happen typically.
Tom Brady's not going to retire. I mean, I would think that would be the biggest shock because regardless of what happens, he looks like he always has right now. After that last game, it was funny they showed that graphic, of his age, where he is now compared to some of the guys back when they were his age in the NFL. It's like, people are a lot younger these days, it looks like. Tom Brady is certainly one of those. I mean, he may have found the fountain of youth here, so he won't retire.
No, but with Ross, we were talking about it before the show, with Roethlisberger sitting on the sideline with Marquise Pouncey after the game, and they were the only one in the area, and they're both crying. I find it hard to believe that Roethlisberger will come back. I get that, you were saying that maybe he should come back to try to erase that memory, but from what we saw down the stretch, I get that, the Steelers, they were missing a lot of key defensive players, and that's why they really struggled, and offense kind of struggled. But Roethlisberger, man, that game last night was bad.
That was big. That was really, really bad. And he's going to be the one that's the biggest question mark, because I know, and we'll get more into him later, but I know he said he wants to come back. Question will be if he actually does. Phillip Rivers, I would be surprised if he comes back. I'll say that. But he continues to surprise a lot of people with his ability to even be out there. And as far as Drew Brees, sounds like he'll probably be done too. So for his sake, you'd love to see him get a run at a title this year. But the good news is he won't be out of the league next year. We know he already has a job with NBC. That's what's coming up with these great quarterbacks, for instance. We're now seeing that Tony Romo is a good example now too, but we're seeing that even before they retire, it's like we're going to lock some of these guys down. Phillip Rivers will be in the media at some point too. I mean, their minds are too good to not utilize. You just hope that they can bring it to a broadcast form.
Yeah,
right?
and that's what's going to be interesting, because what form of broadcasting do they go into?
Yeah,
because I think
color probably, or
I get that he wasn't a quarterback, but how successful would you say Jason Witten's time in the broadcast booth was?
I thought he was in a bad position, because I think that 3-man booths are always usually a disaster for the most part.
That's my point. Yeah. I don't think there's a certain amount of players, and it's a small amount, that could probably go directly from the field to the booth. I think there needs to be a court, like, okay, well, you know what? We're going to put you in a radio booth. We're gonna let you get comfortable with talking on air, and then maybe we'll move you to an analyst role on, maybe we'll put you on a stage before games, and then maybe if you handle a season of that, we'll move you to the booth, because some of these guys, I get that they talk in front of cameras all the time and do interviews, but some of these guys are just uncomfortable when they're the guy.
It's true. I've said that for years. It's one thing, you have to actually know what you're doing and be good at being a sports broadcaster. Like, it takes talent. That's why you do most of the time you'll see former athletes as your color guys.
Yeah.
But there's a reason they're not play-by-play guys.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so it's interesting to see. And for sure, I would think Drew Brees and Phillip Rivers will most likely have their pick of the crop there. And, of course, Tom Brady, we know when he finally does retire, he can do whatever he wants. We'll get more into the NFL here as we go along. Oklahoma State defeated Kansas State over the weekend. That was a good win. We knew that coming in, and then right before the game, you find out, well, Kansas State barely has enough players to even play the game. With COVID issues. And Bruce Weber said afterwards, he's like, I honestly would have preferred to not play that game, to be honest with you. And I mean, I completely get that part, but he did also acknowledge the fact that, hey, the Big 12 said this is what has to happen. If you have enough players, then you got to play, and that's exactly what they did. They were never going to win that game against Oklahoma State anyways.
No, but they, you know, I was talking to Tom about it. You know, I was giving him my opinion during one of the breaks at Casey's show. This Oklahoma State team and prior Oklahoma State teams under Mike Boynton, they have a tendency to play up or down the competition, and we saw that through 3/4 of that game against Kansas State. A win is a win, and they ended up winning by, was it 16? I think is what it was. It wasn't a pretty win. You know, you can't, like, when we found out that it was going to be 6 scholarship players and then like 2 or 3 walk-ons, I'm thinking like, okay, this game should literally be over at halftime. Oklahoma State should go into halftime with like a 35-point lead and play nothing but bench players the rest of the game. And we're sitting at the 8-minute mark of that game, and I'm like, ooh, this isn't good.
Yeah, that's for sure. Early on, and yeah, pretty much until the late in the second half, it was like, this is not.
Then they finished with making their last 13
that's
buckets.
The thing. It wasn't great, but they turned it on there at the end, and that's what you really want to see. And, you know, the whole goal, the whole focus, if you heard Isaac Likely after the game, was we wanted to play each 4-minute segment, you know, with the media timeouts and everything, like it was 0-0. And that's the right mindset I think you have to have at this point.
Well, that's certainly how they played it.
Yeah, it's true, but you know what he's trying to get at, especially after the West Virginia game. You know, so they want that mindset of keep the foot on the gas, which is good to see at the end of the game, and especially when Cade Cunningham was basically non-existent, at least in the scoring factor. I mean, he puts up 5 points, and I'll just say this: it's a good thing it was Kansas State. Because Kansas State is one of the few teams, I think, in the Big 12 that Cade can put up 5 points and you're going to be able to win a game. If that were the case against Kansas tomorrow, they're not going to win that ball game. So, and you give credit to Isaac Likely for stepping up again. He played really well. You give credit to Rondell Walker. You know, he played well again. It's crazy when he gets hot. He's really tough to stop. And then, of course, Caleb Boone decided to step up and have a game. And I think I'm not going to shine a light too bright on Caleb here, because it was good to see, and he needed to do that, but there was nobody in his way. You know, he took advantage of that.
And that's something that I had mentioned as well. Yes, we saw season high 14 points from Caleb Boone, which was good in the sense of it got Caleb off, you know, kind of got him out of that snide. I put up an article yesterday on Pokes Report talking about his bounce back game was encouraging, you know, and we talked to him, the media talked to him after the game was over, and he was like, yeah, it was good, but I can't be satisfied. My team needs me to continue. If you look at what he did in the prior games, he had 4 points and 4 rebounds in 15 minutes against West Virginia. Or before, in the win against Texas Tech, he had just 5 points and 6 rebounds in 14 minutes before fouling out. He had just 4 points and 2 rebounds in 10 minutes in the loss to Texas, and 8 points and 5 rebounds in 19 minutes against TCU. So 14 points, that was good, but he only had 2 rebounds. He did that against less than stellar talent at Kansas State. So in terms of, okay, Caleb Boone is back, I'm hesitant to say that he's back, but I think it was really good for him in terms of mentality, especially with him coming out on Thursday and saying, I don't know where my mind is. I don't know how close I am to being back on the court because I'm not doing the things that require me to be back on the court yet. So for mentality's sake, I think it was a good game for Caleb, but he's got a tall task with David McCormick of Kansas.
Oh, big time. McCormick's been last few games have been stellar.
17 and 20.
Yeah, those have been really good, and we'll have a full breakdown of Kansas tomorrow. Should be a really good matchup. But I think Caleb's right. And the fact that he can't stop here. You know, then that was my biggest thing was played well, but I want to see the consistency. If he can do some of that, even some of that. In upcoming games and tougher matchups, because you look at the schedule right now, it's a tall task coming up here for Oklahoma State. I mean, it gets really into the thick of it here when it comes to the opponents they're going to have to face. You talk about Kansas, Baylor is coming up very shortly. Obviously, Oklahoma is no one to just go over again, so it's going to be a lot of different looks here for Oklahoma State coming down the stretch. Now, as far as what Ice was able to bring to the floor, I think we're starting to see him settle in a little bit, and that's at the right time. And that's something that's really important to see right now. If ever he was going to get in that groove, it's at this point, because he was able to fill in where Cade wasn't scoring. And I'll say this about Cade. I thought he facilitated the ball well. I thought he played decent defense, and he rebounded the ball well. He's not a guy that, and we've seen it so many times in college basketball. Yeah, there's a lot of times that star players, if they're not getting theirs in the point column, because that's really all that matters to them, and I get it. But if that's not happening, they just don't play, right? You start seeing the body language change a little bit, not associated with the team, seen over and over. Not the case with Cade. And, he's taken out of the game, and he's collecting his thoughts and all that. But he comes back in, he plays a part, and he helps Oklahoma State get the win. So it's impressive. I think that's been one of the best things to come out of Cade Cunningham, has been his maturity so far this season. We knew that coming in. The way he handled himself, at least from what we're seeing on the floor, is good to see. Now, overall, this is a team in Oklahoma State that they know this win is not one that they're going to hang on long.
Yeah.
If I'm Oklahoma State, I am taking this win. I'm saying that was great because they needed to bounce back, no doubt. We had talked about it off air. If they managed to come in, of course, we didn't know Kansas State was going to be as shorthanded as they were. But if they came in and managed to lose this game to Kansas State, then all of a sudden the wheels fall off the rails a little bit, and we're talking about who knows what happens against Kansas. They get this win against K-State. They get back in the win column. They bounce back. And they come into a really tough matchup against Kansas, which to me should be on the minds the second they left Manhattan.
Yeah.
That you have to get ready. This is a Kansas team that has struggled at times this year, but guess what? They're still Kansas. And I know Oklahoma State has found success at times against them too. And if you look at the teams here at Oklahoma State, the team that they have this year, it could be one that exploits some of what Kansas does. But the biggest thing that we talked about too is their post presence. And that's what's just completely ate up Oklahoma State this year, all over the place. That's one thing they're going to have to make sure they try to avoid. But, and I'll say this, I think it's still impressive to see the production when guys aren't available to be out there on the floor. That's one of the things Oklahoma State's done well this year. It hasn't been just a 1-2 punch, although we have seen it at times when Ice and Cade do that. It's great. They take over a game. But again, you got guys, especially young guys, stepping up, taking over ball games, hitting big shots, being productive on both sides of the floor. And that's important to see right now.
Yeah, this is going to be a game where you're going to need an active bench. You know, this is where you're going to need Rondell Walker to step up. You're going to need Bryce Williams to step up. Depending on his health status, like where he's at physically, I think you'll probably see it'll probably be a coin toss between Caleb Boone and Moncrief. Who's going to start down low, but whoever it is, let's say they start Caleb, you're going to need a big time presence from MA. You're going to have him have one of his biggest games of the year, and vice versa. If MA comes off the bench, or if MA starts and Caleb's coming off the bench, you're going to need a big performance from Caleb off the bench. I mean, you're going to need your starters to perform, but you're going to have to get that secondary production outside of Cade and outside of Ice. You're going to need Avery to really turn it up. You're going to need Keelan to come off the bench and get you 7 to 9 points. This isn't a game where it's not like Kansas State where you can go in and you can be like, all right, Cade, you're going to have probably the worst game of your high school and collegiate career, but we can get enough from these other guys. Like, you're going to need a big performance from Cade. You're going to need a big performance from Ice. You're going to need Avery to have a solid game. You're going to need Caleb to have a solid game, Rondell to have a solid game. Because Kansas, while this isn't as good a Kansas team as, say, last year or the year before, this is still the number 6 team in the country. This is a team that can come in and beat you by 20 any given night. So it's going to have to be a concerted effort. Now, I'm looking forward to really getting into it because there's a lot of different aspects and angles that are going to go into this.
Yeah, a lot still has to go right to beat a Kansas team. Yeah. I mean, it's just how it is.
Well, and I get that Boynton has had a weirdly large amount of success against Kansas. I think they've won 4 out of the last 7, 3 out of the last 4, including the tail end of that sweep in 2018, which hadn't been done since 2001. And 3 out of the last 4, I believe, is in Stillwater. So 4 out of the last 7 and 3 out of the last 4 in Stillwater. So they have success against Kansas State or against Kansas, which not many teams can do. But like I said earlier, this team plays up. It never really plays level. It either rises up and plays really well against really good teams, and then we saw it against Kansas State, a team that only had 6 scholarship players, and you're struggling through the first half and through the little bit of the first half of the second half. So, I mean, you would think that history would tell you that Oklahoma State's going to go out and have a really good game against Kansas. But you can't just rely on, well, we're talented enough, we're going to go out there and we'll play well.
Where Oklahoma State was last year, and we know they won on that buzzer beater right in the Big 12 tournament before everything shut down. They were about to play Kansas again. Yeah. Would they have been competitive against that Kansas team?
I think so. I mean, you saw what you mean like last year's tournament
yeah,
team?
that team.
I think so. You look at what they did to even get to that point. They won 7 of their last 9 games or something, and you go back to midway through this season, and they had like a 12-game winning streak going back to last year, which was one of the longest in the country. It took Ice a while to figure out, where he needed to be, and I think you saw that Ice was the leader of that team, even though they had, Cam McGriff and Lundy Waters, because when Ice went down, everybody just acted like they had never played basketball before, and it took them a while. But once they got rolling through the middle of February, yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna, be bold enough to say that they would have beaten that Kansas team, because beating Kansas in the state of Kansas, whether it's Lawrence East or Lawrence, is really, really tough. But I think it would have been a really good game, especially with how they won that game against Iowa State, because Iowa State is always tough. They're not as bad as they were this year.
Yeah, that would have been an interesting one to see, no doubt. I was looking forward to that one. Of course, it was before before everything just
ruined.
Yeah, before
it was that night.
Yeah, it was. That was sports.
Very next day,
ground zero, just boom, and it was over.
Yeah, because you had the buzzer beater win against Iowa State, and then the Thunder game canceled. Like while I was sitting at my dining room table, doing my post game, and I was like, the Thunder game's canceled. What is this? And then the next day, like Robert called me after that, and he was like, get ready, you're about to see a lot of stuff go down. And I was like, are you sure? And he was like, Zach, the NBA does not cancel games and empty out an arena because of the flu. Like, get ready.
Yeah.
Tomorrow's going to be really bad for college basketball. And sure enough, it was 10:30 in the morning. The Big 12, we're canceling the rest of the tournament. I was like, man.
It was really wild. Really wild.
I will say never, though, in my wildest imagination, did I expect that to be the beginning of one of the worst years I hesitate to say U.S. history, because there's been a lot of really bad stuff go on, but one of the worst years in recent memory, because I expect, okay, you know what? They're going to they'll postpone the Big 12 tournament. We're going to see a couple weeks, and it was just like, every day worse. And then you couldn't buy toilet paper. And I was like, oh, man, you can't buy toilet paper. It's going to be real bad.
Hey, that's what it was with me, too, though, because for me, when something like that happens to sports, that's when it's like,
multi-billion-dollar industry.
This is serious. And I never forget. I sat there and I watched the end of the Oklahoma State game. It's like, okay, that'll be fun to watch when they take on Kansas. Went on, proceeded to watch North Carolina get their asses handed to them.
Shocker.
So I was already in a bad mood.
Sure.
Then I see the ticker down there that Rudy Gobert is out and
touching all the microphones.
I was like,
and recorders.
Are you kidding me? So then
at the time, think about how insignificant that was.
I know.
And then a week later, you're like,
that happened, and I'll never forget my dad sitting right next to me, and he goes, "You watch Major League Baseball. We'll be next." And I said, "No, I'm not going to shut down Major League Baseball. The NBA's overreacting. They're not going to shut it down." Sure enough, Major League Baseball is
not even a week later.
Yeah, falls, and it was just, if only we knew what was coming.
Well, and it's insane to think about how quick it all happened, because the Thunder canceled their game that night. I think it was that Wednesday, because I think Thursday is when.
That's right.
Because then it was like the Big 12 comes out and cancels, and the Big 10 comes out and cancels, and then all of a sudden, the NBA is going to postpone the rest of the season, and then like within the course of 2 or 3 days, like, every sports league in the world was like, yeah, I think we're gonna hold off. We're not gonna, which I think is promising now, because we saw how successful, if you're careful and you do things properly, college football proved that there's going to be isolated incidents, but on a whole, it can be done successfully.
Yeah.
Now, the NBA, I think, they're starting to run into a few issues because they don't know how to control superstars. But, it's by and large, it's just like college football.
Yeah, it looms even larger that the NFL is getting a season in.
Which blows my mind that they did not cancel one game.
Incredible. And college football, for the most part, I know we've had their issues, right?
Sure.
But we're at the national championship game.
Small percentages.
We're at the national championship game.
And it's not delayed or postponed.
No. And we're with a team that conference said we're not going to play, right, at one point. Yeah. It's insane. So it is doable. That's been the best part about all this, is that we figured out you can still play sports.
Yeah.
When we come back on the afternoon sports drive, how about those Cleveland Browns? Oh, boy. Whoever would have... it's 2020. When Cleveland is advancing in the playoffs.
And it's not even 2020, but it sure feels like it.
That's true. I'm still accounting it to 2020 for them, the season they had.
I think you chalk it up because it's the 2021 season.
You have to chalk it up because it's like, look what they did in this year, managed to get there, and then maybe people thought, you know what, including myself, it's new year.
Sure.
The Browns are going to fall apart.
Yeah.
Oh, boy. Was it
back to normal?
Was it the complete opposite or what? We're going to get to that coming up, as well as national championship game picks. A little bit of a preview for that, too, tonight. All coming up here on the Afternoon Sports Drive.
Yeah. Run it back. Tell them what I'm coming at. I was on the hit there, now I'm done with that. Scared of what I didn't want, scared of what I wanted, and thought that I was finished, but I hardly had begun. In fact, I'm a beast, I'm a monster, a savage, and any other metaphor the culture can imagine. And I got a caption for anybody asking. That is, I am feeling fantastic. Some days it doesn't take much to bring me down. Some days I'm struggling for control. Some days it doesn't take much to bring me down.
Back into the Afternoon Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network with Patrick Wheeler and Zach Lancaster. All right, so we have a lot of stories out of the NFL playoffs, but last night the Cleveland Browns decided to not just win, but shock everybody in the way that they did it. And, when you score a touchdown, a defensive touchdown at that, on the first play of the game, number one, you don't need much more motivation for your team other than we have the lead and our offense hasn't even been out there. Oh, and by the way, it was the first play of the game. And then that really is a tone setter.
Yeah.
It's going to take a really good offense to bounce back from that, because it's one thing for it to happen on the first drive. Like, that's not ideal, but the first play of the game, you just got out there. And it made it even worse to me if you think about it, with the Steelers not playing everybody a week beforehand as well. It was like, man, and I think you saw some signs. Chris Collinsworth pointed it out a little bit too during the game, when one of the biggest issues for the passing game for the Steelers this year has been receivers unable to catch the football. They've been dropping a lot of footballs. And Eric Ebron hasn't been in for a while. He's dealing with COVID issues. Big Ben, they haven't had the cohesiveness. There are multiple times where they were just off. And it's little things like that you can see magnified in a playoff game. You had a defensive touchdown to start it off. It's just a really big-time tone setter, and it's tough to come back from. Only the best teams are really going to be able to respond, because the idea there is for the Steelers, obviously, if they let that happen, they come back and they march down the field like it never happened, right? And they tie the game, and it's no big deal. And that's what I expected. Okay, I expected after the touchdown, because Big Ben has been there before. He's a Super Bowl champion, times 2, right? He's been there. He knows what it takes. And in that situation, it all fell on his shoulders, and he just didn't have it anymore. He just doesn't have it anymore. And we saw that the rest of the way with him throwing the football.
Yeah.
He throws 4 interceptions, and they were bad. They were lazy passes. His ball's getting tipped at the line of scrimmage.
Shout out Vincent Taylor.
Yeah, Vincent, that's right. He played a hell of a game. And he's not seeing defenders.
Yeah.
He's Big Ben. He's not out there seeing the defense. He's not reading. He's not getting pre-snap reads down. All these little things that he's done for years and years, about as well as anybody. And it looked like he had never played. I give credit to the Browns because there was so much against them at this point. So you had this mixture of, we have the chip stacked against us. A lot of people still don't believe in us. But at the same time, you had this really, really solid level of confidence on this team. Now you come in and Kevin Stefanski's not there.
Yeah.
A lot of people were like, well, he's a big deal to Baker Mayfield's success. Yeah, we said that last week. Baker is Most comfortable when he's on the sideline. If something goes wrong, he can go over there and talk to him about it. That wasn't the case here. And I couldn't think of a better opportunity for Kevin Stefanski to have COVID and sit out than this game. They didn't need him. While I'm sure they would have obviously loved to have him over there on the sideline, that game was not close. At the end of the first quarter, it's 28-0. And even then, Zach, I'm thinking to myself, even then, okay, the Steelers might find a way.
Right.
The reason why, because it's the Browns. Halftime likes to break things up, and maybe the Steelers were going to hopefully come out, get a stop. That defense has to show up at some point. And they did make it somewhat interesting, but you got to give Cleveland credit for just continuing to respond every single time.
Well, they cut it down to what? Was it 12?
12, yeah.
I think at one point there. If I'm being honest, like I watched more of that game. I watched the Bills Colts, and I watched a good amount of the Steelers Browns. When Pouncey launches the ball 20 some odd yards, which you got to try
to miss Big Ben.
Well, and even then, like, how hard was he snapping that ball?
It's true. He was
like,
was that just like an amped up thing, or he never does that?
Not for a 9 or 10 time Pro Bowler.
That's the thing. He never does.
Like,
that.
I could get it if you're a rookie center or you're a second or third year center and this is your very first ever playoff, like the Browns. If the Browns center went out, I would expect that from them because that was their first playoff appearance in 18 years. When was the last time they even won a playoff game before that? So, I mean, but you get a multi-time, near double-digit Pro Bowl center in Marquise Pouncey, and that dude launched that snap. Like, you got to fire that ball to between your legs to get it, 20 yards down the field, and then I get it. The ball was kicked. The ball was booted a little bit. But damn, like, that ball should have never passed the 15, let alone into the end zone for a defensive touchdown. But even then, I still wasn't like, well, this game, it's whatever. First play of the game, they can come back from that. The Steeler offense, sure, they lost 4 out of their last 5 games, but most of the starters on both sides of the ball didn't play last week. They still, figured out a way to get close, whatever, no big deal. All the starters are back. It's playoff time. Mike Tomlin, a Hall of Fame coach, is going to have his guys ready to go. Cleveland didn't practice. They don't have their coach.
That's the other thing.
Baker Mayfield is meeting half of his offensive line before they go out onto the field to start the game. Okay, that's fine. Pittsburgh, they're going to march down the field. And then Big Ben throws an interception. And I'm like, maybe I'm a little overconfident, and then boom, score. By that time, I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to flip back over the episode of ER that I was watching. I got 20 minutes left. I'll finish that out. And then my dad calls me, and it's 28-0. Even when Pittsburgh got it back to 12 points, I had maybe 5% confidence that they were going to figure out a way and come back and win that game.
Well, any other Browns team in history, you would have thought, you know what, we're going to see a string of 3-and-outs here. Yeah. They're not going to be able to complete drives, but they just answered. They had an answer for everything. And, I give credit to because Baker Mayfield wasn't extremely accurate by any means, but he played well. He continued to play well. And the run game, I give credit to, that's the thing is they did shut down Nick Chubb for the most part, but you have to give credit for the what the Browns were able to do to keep them involved in the passing game. That includes Nick Chubb. Just because he was getting shut down wasn't meaning they were going to take him out of the game like we've seen before. It was well coached, every single aspect. But it's like you said, no practice at all this week. They practiced for the first time on Friday. And I'm not necessarily all that naive to think there was probably some sort of practice going on at some point in some way or fashion, but not to the level you're used to before a playoff game by any means. So you get that working against you. You get no head coach. And as you said, the offensive line falling apart. I saw a story where Baker Mayfield had met one of the offensive linemen a few days before.
And the photo of that offensive lineman that they're using was of him in a Jags uniform because he probably hadn't had time to take a Browns photo yet.
Like, he was on the practice squad. It was insane.
He's like the gray face player in the Madden games.
Speaking of gray faces, I don't know how Juju feels about calling them gray faces. We'll get to him in just a second. But, the Steelers, they did attempt somewhat of the comeback. Now, people look at the stat line, and if they didn't watch the game, they go, well, Big Ben threw over 500 yards. Yeah. That's impressive. But he turned the ball over 5 times. Whoops. And 4 of those were interceptions.
Were you on the side of, at some point last night, there's no reason that Mason Rudolph shouldn't be in that game? Just like Mason Rudolph, at least at this point, and I don't know if he's ever going to get to a point where he could, but Mason Rudolph is not at a point in his career where he could have led Pittsburgh to a comeback. But when you're down 28-0, I don't see why you're not playing your backup. Unless it was unless Tomlin, you know what, this is probably Big Ben's last game. Let's see if he can try to mount a comeback. I just don't get why you don't put your second string quarterback out.
2 reasons. One, I don't think the Steelers are confident in Mason Rudolph. Really don't. Because I truly believe this year they're about to go into the draft, and if they're smart, they will, and find a quarterback. Because I'm sorry, Mason Rudolph isn't the answer. I know everybody around here loves the guy, and he did fantastic things for Oklahoma State.
He's a great college quarterback.
Yeah, he's
going to go down as one of the best.
Yes. And the other thing is, Mike Tomlin looked at this and said, probably waited, I'm sure, who gives me the best option to even attempt to come back? And this was even with Big Ben throwing interceptions.
Right.
Like, Big Ben's been here.
No, for sure.
We're going to give him the chance.
And I think he obviously does give the Steelers the best chance.
You live and die with him at this point. And I know that we saw towards the end of the year there was a lot of die. It really, really was. I mean, they fell apart. Now, his receivers weren't necessarily helping him. At the same time, your defense, they were the anchor this entire season.
Decimated.
And these last few weeks, they got hurt. They couldn't make plays. And if that happens, your offense, guess what, isn't good enough. The biggest 11-0 frauds I think we've ever seen.
If you're Mike Tomlin, do you go out and you get that third Watt?
Yeah, right. I mean, he's going to be available.
Just complete the.
He said he doesn't have enough Watts on the team. He needs one more. Yeah. You know what's interesting is Mike Tomlin. So yesterday we saw 2 of the worst, in my opinion, coaching decisions seen in a long time. And they both came with teams down on the scoreboard and in 4th down situations, 4th and short late in the game. Mike Vrabel did it earlier with Tennessee, and in my opinion helped screw Tennessee out of that win. And then, as if that weren't bad enough, which we'll get to later, Mike Tomlin said, hold my beer, and punts on 4th and 1 when the Steelers are attempting to come back. You cannot punt in that situation. Then he defends it afterwards. I'm fired up about this because you cannot do that. I like Mike Tomlin. Think he's a good coach. Think he's done a good job for the most part with that team, with the teams that he's had in Pittsburgh. If I'm a player, I'm pissed. I would be over the side like, dude, what are you doing?
Yeah.
You know, and I don't know what Big Ben was saying or not saying. Maybe at that point he was like, this isn't going to go our way either ways. But you have to keep scoring in that situation. And what's crazy to me is how simple these decisions really should be. And yet we're seeing head coaches who get paid millions of dollars not be able to get it right.
Well, and I get when, you send your punt team out there and you got an up back and you're trying to draw Cleveland offsides. You don't want to call that timeout. But when you take that penalty, when you send your punt team back out there, Cleveland expects you to punt. Go for a fake then. Yeah, because they're not expecting a fake then.
I actually thought that at that point, too. What if they fake it here?
Yeah.
I actually thought when they brought the punt team out, there's no way they're actually going to punt this one.
No.
And they did. And I don't want to hear the speech of it. You would never understand what it's like because you've never been in that pressure. It's not pressure. You're sitting there with a 4th and it's not like it was 4th and 8.
No, 4th and 2.
It was 4th and 2, and you're telling me you couldn't find a way to manage to get 2 yards. And if that had happened, not saying the Steelers would have won, but they would have had a way better chance continuing to score.
With that momentum, I think they would have gone down and probably scored.
Right, it could have been the difference in the season.
Absolutely.
So I think it's called being a game manager. It's what you are paid to do. In my opinion, you got to do your damn job.
Well, hell,
and quit overthinking.
If you punt the ball, you're probably going to lose anyway.
Well, and that's
so why not? Why not be ballsy?
That's what he was defending.
And go out there and punt.
He's like, hey, we were confident we were going to get some stops.
You hadn't done it before.
You don't stop. I mean, the way the Browns were moving, there's a thing called momentum.
They had it.
And you give it up. And it's not like Mike Tomlin hasn't been around this before. It's inexcusable. It really is. But look back at this game. What he and Mike Vrabel did yesterday were instrumental in causing the loss of what happened with their teams.
Well, what was that stat we were talking about? It's like, I want to say throughout the course of the history of the NFL playoffs, they punts at that situation had only happened like 11 or 12 times throughout and 2 of them happened yesterday.
The recommendation, first of all, with the analytics was listed as very strong for them to go for it. Okay, not surprising there. So that managed to happen. And then the stats you're talking about, I'm trying to pull them up, and I thought they would pull up, but of course they're not. It was something like that, just completely ridiculous.
Yeah, it was like,
here it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, the recommendation was very, very strong. If you go for it there, your success rate is 71%. Okay? And that is something that almost everybody would do. With surrender index of 9.29, that punt ranks as the 94th percentile of cowardly punts of the 2020 season and the 92nd percentile of all punts since 2009. In other words, straight up terrible decision based off of nothing.
Yeah.
There was nothing there that could have. And that's what I would be so frustrated. I'm frustrated. I'm not even a Steelers fan. If I'm a Steelers fan, I'm hearing this, I'm like, that's the excuse too? We're going to get a stop and get the ball back? Just unbelievably bad coaching there from Mike Tomlin. That's something he should answer for, and he's not. It's ridiculous. I think at that point, the Steelers would have been happy to have someone else at head coach to make that decision. It was insane. The last thing I want to say about this game is this, and I think this is a really interesting storyline. There's 2 interesting storylines here. One of them is the whole Juju thing. You know, he goes into a free agency year, which I think the Steelers will try to keep him around, but if there's no Big Ben, that might also not be the case, and he could be somewhere else. He's a good receiver, but he had the chance to be, honestly, like not just the face of the NFL when it came to that position, but the most liked player in the whole sport. Because Antonio Brown left such a sour taste in the mouths of everybody. They saw this drama unfold on a public stage. Everybody did.
And continue to unfold.
Yeah, and Antonio Brown was calling him out right on Instagram, and Juju was like, dude, I was just trying to learn from you and all this, and it was acting humble, and everybody was on his side. This year, Juju gets a little cocky. They're 11-0. He starts doing all the TikTok nonsense online. He's dancing on the logos. He talks before the Browns game and says the Browns are still the Browns, which, by the way, if you saw Baker Mayfield or anybody else run off the field last night, the video afterwards, that's all they could say. Browns are still the Browns. We talked about it coming in, that was perfect billboard material, and they used it. I give them credit for that. Baker Mayfield listens to everybody out there that has anything negative to say. He listens to talk show hosts. He listens to other players. He hears it all.
Well, it was perfect. Like, the perfect example is when he's sitting there in that press conference and he takes time in the middle of a question to turn his hat around backwards.
It's a flip off to Colin Cowherd. It's the second time they've done that. They called the play regarding Colin Cowherd. He listens to everything. But the Juju stuff is really interesting because it's a transition as one of the most liked players to one of, I think, the most unlikable for a lot of people, fans, and teams. They go out there and want to headhunt Juju Smith-Schuster. If you're a slot receiver in the NFL and you make a living in the middle of the football field, that's not a great thing to do. That's not really an ideal situation for you. So it's interesting to watch his transition these last couple this year for sure. The other thing I thought was pretty interesting, Zach, was Kareem Hunt afterwards.
Yeah.
First of all, when he got some touches, he was pretty heavily out-touched by Nick Chubb. But he runs the football at the goal line, scores 2 touchdowns, and he ran really hard. He gets on Instagram Live after the game, as everybody does, and, of course, he says Browns will be the Browns over and over. Everyone's laughing at that. Then he talks about next week. Everybody knows Kansas City's on deck, and he says on his Instagram Live, next week is personal. He said that over and over. Next week is personal.
When you're the reason you get either cut or traded or kicked off of a team, you lose, abandon, forfeit the right to make it personal. When your own moronic actions, that eliminates, forfeits any kind of personality that you get to have towards any kind of other team.
It was,
period.
Yeah, that's why everyone was like, personal for what?
Hell, you talking about? You got yourself kicked off the team.
Like, it's one thing if you're cut or if whatever, some drama happens and then they can't keep you around and not necessarily your fault. Like, dude, I've said this from the beginning. He would still be a Kansas City Chief had he not lied to the organization and then came out on ESPN and publicly admitted that he lied. Like, they asked him and even gave him the chance, okay? This is what tells me I'm not really sure how intelligent Kareem Hunt actually is, okay? Because he was given the chance to sit down with Kansas City. They set him down and said, tell us the truth. And I guarantee you what they told him was, you tell us the truth right now, we're going to make sure you stay with us at this organization. We're going to work things out. Yeah. There were never any charges filed in this situation. He kicks the female. It's on video. Nothing ever came from it. But he lied to Kansas City early on. The video comes out, and then he's kicked off for lying. And then he comes back after this game and says, going to Kansas City, and it's personal for me. Like, dude, there's nothing there to make it personal for you. Like, you even said, I went back and looked at the quote to make sure I had it right. He went back and whenever all that all happened, said Kansas City did the right thing. Said, I put myself in this situation, and Kansas City did the right thing. There's nothing personal here. And I think Kareem Hunt's story is super interesting. You look when he got pulled over by the cops in Cleveland, and you look in the police footage, and all of a sudden, he's pulled over for weed in his car. I think there was alcohol in it too, and the cop's like, "Hey man, what's your deal?" And he goes, "You're Kareem Hunt." He's like, "Yeah," and he almost broke down and said it happened right around the Chiefs Super Bowl. He said, "I should be playing in the Super Bowl in Kansas City right now," and it broke my heart for him. It really did. It broke my heart for Kareem Hunt. Felt terrible for him because he seemed lost, big time. Just got a chance with Cleveland, couldn't get together. But now, you're telling me that it's personal? If anything, you just gave billboard material for Kansas City and Patrick Mahomes, and we all know what they've done with that in the past. Mahomes may not come out and publicly say it, take some things personally. And he cheered on. Go to his Twitter. Patrick Mahomes cheered on Kareem Hunt last night. Said, "Hey, that's my guy. Love to see him." And Kareem kind of responds with that. So if you needed any more excitement for this Chiefs-Browns game, I think you got it. Should be a lot of fun. But the Browns just absolutely dominated and straight up humiliated the Steelers on national television last night, and I'm sure there are a lot of people that are completely fine with the way that went down. So it'll be interesting. We'll get into more later in the week of this upcoming matchup with Kansas City and the Browns, as well as all the other matchups in the playoffs, and more on that coming up in the show as well. When we come back here on the Afternoon Sports Drive, we'll give you our picks for tonight's national championship game between Alabama and Ohio State. It's coming up next.
Whoa. Staring as I go, I gave until my soul hurt, and never told them so. Watching as I fall, somewhere down below. Maybe I'm just falling to get somewhere they want, get somewhere they want.
It's the Afternoon Sports Drive here on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network with Patrick Wheeler and Zach Lancaster rounding out this first hour. And Zach, did you know there's a national championship game on tonight?
Oh, is that tonight?
That's tonight. Isn't that crazy? Yeah.
Is basketball's already?
Yeah,
this
right.
year is flying by.
It's still, to me, like Alabama, Ohio State. It's going to be fun. I think. I'm personally not expecting a blowout.
I'm not either.
I think it'll be a competitive game. But I still think the biggest storyline for me here is that Ohio State, getting to this point. I'd love to see a documentary made of this season from Ohio State's perspective, especially Justin Fields. Justin Fields, when he was told that he's not going to be able to play, we're shutting down the entire season. And, of course, he was instrumental in fighting back with that, with Trevor Lawrence and Chuba and all the other stars in the college football world. Starting the We Want to Play movement and everybody kind of listening to that. And just the fact that there was a lot of pressure, and I mean a lot of pressure, put on the Big Ten by parents, by players. I know some donors. You just look at some of that stuff and you read about it and you're like, wow, they really didn't give up. So I give them a lot of credit for doing that and not backing down, because they knew that not just for the kids to play, my goodness, but this was a team that could get to the national championship game. And I know they didn't play as many games as Alabama, but you're telling me they still wouldn't have probably ended up the season undefeated? Was there anybody in the Big Ten that was going to defeat Ohio State? I don't think so. Certainly wasn't Michigan. And there wasn't a lot of other teams that I think were going to get it done. Ohio State's got one of the best teams in the country. Justin Fields is a star. Trey Sermon is a star. They got a lot of really good talent on this team, and it's big time. I know that some people don't agree, but to me it's a slap in the face to the Big Ten. saying it's basically like, hey, dummies, we were here this whole time, and you almost effectively canceled us for the season, and we wouldn't have been here. The money wouldn't have been here. Nice going. Like, it's great that they're back, and it's great that they got to come back, and I'm all for that. That's a big-time positive that a lot of people, were instrumental in making that happen, like I said. But the fact that it was canceled anyways and almost there wasn't a shot for Ohio State, unbelievably stupid, and I'm just glad that it's kind of a big slap in the face. Now, for Alabama, I think you give them a ton of credit, obviously, because they dealt with this like it was a completely normal year. Like there was not a single issue going on with that. I know Nick Saban had COVID, and I know they lost Jalen Waddle, but it didn't matter. They still had guys. They had multiple guys in the Heisman running, for crying out loud. They're easily the best team in the country. It was no big deal. They answered it like you would expect, I think, from Alabama, and it was even better because of all the COVID nonsense going on this year. So they come into this one. By the way, the line has moved to a 9-point favorite for Alabama in this game. Yeah, they bumped up a
little bigger than I anticipated.
I want to say it opened at 8 originally, and then it bounced up a bit there. I haven't heard any. I think they said Jalen Waddle was going to be a game time decision. Now, what that means to me is Alabama's basically just saying he's
you need to prepare for someone that's not going to be there.
Yeah, it's just like we are going to throw him in this game, even though I think they could beat him with Devontae Smith solely because he's just that good. And I'm not, like I said, not expecting a blowout by any means. No. I do think Alabama wins this game. And could they cover that 9? Yeah, but I'm like you. I liked it a little bit more when it was lower than that, just a bit around 8 or so.
I feel like to cover that 9, it would be somewhat of like a late game score. Mm-hmm. Like Ohio State's trying to make a run, and maybe Alabama forces a turnover or something, and they score late. But I don't see it being really much more than a, like a 2-score game would be I feel like a stretch.
Totals, you want some points. Totals at 74.5. We're expecting a lot
Big
of points.
12 game?
Yeah, no defense in this ball game for Alabama or Ohio State. And I think it has that ability to get up there. I would be a little cautious to take that over. So my advice would probably say I'd hit the under, and I would take Ohio State plus 9 in this ball game if I'm betting on it. And Alabama's going to win. I think you're in that boat too, right? You're going with Alabama.
Yeah.
But just know we don't expect.
I think it's going to be a really good.
Yeah,
game,
I do too.
though.
I think that we're going to see a lot of star power in this game. I'm excited to see what Justin Fields does because he's healed up some here. He got some extra time off that injury. So we'll see if he's 100%. Should be close, I believe. And then of course you're going to get fireworks from Alabama. So it should be a lot of fun tonight in the national championship game. By the way, you a fan of the way ESPN covers this game with like 100 different things to view and listen?
Yeah, I am. I like when with the semifinal game last week. I watched a good portion of that game with the Skycam.
How was that? I've seen some of that, but
it was good. You have to. The Skycam is a good way to watch a game if you aren't super intent on watching the game. Like if you want to put it on in the background, you kind of forget you're watching a game because you can only hear crowd noise, you hear the PA announcer, and the Skycam follows the football. So it's good. Like if you need to watch a game and you need to hear the announcers to know what's going on, then the Skycam is not for you. Mm-hmm. But it's a fun change. I don't mind it. I also enjoy with the national championship games the feed with the team's radio crew.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I enjoy that. Unless you're just a diehard fan of the game, I don't really care to watch the coach's room.
Yeah, that's.
I don't want to watch a bunch of coaches sitting around talking about a game.
Yeah, there's like a coach's room. There's like a stats room you can watch.
The Skycam is fun. I don't mind the Skycam. But if I had to choose, I would probably just watch the traditional. But I appreciate with it being such a large game that they give people multiple different views.
Yeah.
Like they probably should have a Nickelodeon game. It is what it is, right? It's nothing special.
Yeah.
It's nothing fancy, but for what it was on face value, it was an absolute home run. Like, explain the game to children. It hit that. It had now it's obviously geared towards the younger crowd. Like college age kids would probably love it because they grew up on SpongeBob. So like for what it was on face value, and they picked the perfect game. Like just an absolute pooper.
That
of a
was
game.
the goal. It was
terrible.
You never expected the Chicago offense to be anything that was going to make it a close game.
So I honestly, I think you're going to see a lot more games and other sports on Nickelodeon.
Yeah, it was interesting. Don't worry, we're going to get to that later too.
Yes.
I got some thoughts on Nickelodeon.
You're wrong on your thoughts, but it's okay.
Well, you already knew when we announced it. I came in here. I remember I said that.
It was so fun
one day.
Yeah.
I said, Zach, they're going to put the game on Nickelodeon. You call me a liar. I think no, it's going to happen.
It's just so out of the blue.
No,
it's so random.
Yeah, it was super strange,
man.
So that we'll definitely get into that. Interesting to see some of that yesterday. Hour number 2 of the afternoon sports drive with Buy or Sell and the NFL playoffs. Much more coming up after this.
And I don't know how we make it out when we make that on the low. Even if it rains, you'd rather make it snow. Both you and me know we gotta let it go. Laying on the ground, wondering why it's so cold. How we make it out when we make that on the low. Even if it rains, you'd rather make it snow. Both you and me know we gotta let it go. Laying on the ground, wondering why it's so cold. Why you so icy cold? My tears can't drip. Sitting awake alone, tattoos I miss.
Welcome back. Afternoon Sports Drive, hour number 2. Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Patrick Wheeler, Zach Lancaster. All right, so before we get into Buy or Sell.
Yeah, some Oklahoma State news.
Yeah, and that's going to be, I'm just going to let you drop it's not a Waj bomb like ESPN, just call it a Zach bomb or something.
Yeah.
You can come up with your own funny name, whatever you want, but take it away.
Yeah, Zach's sack of facts.
Ooh. Interesting.
Little play on words. So we found out just before we took that last break that Oklahoma State safety Colby Harvell-Peel has declared for the NFL draft. If I were to take a look across the defense and say this guy is probably going to declare for the draft, it would have been Colby. I think that Colby probably could benefit from another year in Stillwater. You look at what he did last year: 44 total tackles, 4 pass breakups, 3 sacks, and 2 interceptions. Really good. You look at what he did the year before, 2019. Breakout game was against Iowa State. He finishes the season with like 8 or 9 pass breakups, which is just wild. But I hesitate to say that I expected Colby Harvell-Peel to declare for the NFL draft. But if I were to look across the defense and say this guy for sure out of all of them, if I had to pick one that would declare, it would have been Colby. Colby, I think, is good enough that I think Colby will probably get drafted. You look at what he's done the past few years. I don't think he's going to be first 4 rounds. I think it'll be that second, third day type of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's it. If I had to pick, I would have picked him out of the other defenders. It's still a bit of a surprise.
Yeah, I think he was a bit fringe, for me. Because I'm in agreement. I think he could have benefited from another year here. For instance, like what Malcolm is doing. And so I could see him falling in that 6th, 7th round, potentially. But playing safety in the NFL now, especially with the way receivers have become so talented, it's you got to be really, really good. So Colby still has some growth there and some potential. He's going to have to fight his way to make a team. And, one more season here with Oklahoma State, and it's a great year, perhaps. He's all of a sudden finding himself a little bit higher on draft boards. But I don't blame him. Go for it, See what you can do. Because that is a position, again, while it's tough to make an NFL field in that position, he has the ability to make a difference, I think, eventually. So we'll see. I wish him the best. I think he did a lot of great things for Oklahoma State when he was here, and he was don't get it twisted. Maybe this year some of the numbers were a bit down, but he was a huge part of this defense. Yeah,
and and that's an interesting point because I'm not trying to brag here, but the tweet I sent out was Colby declares for the draft, finished the 2020 season, 44 tackles, yada, yada, yada. This leaves a big hole in the back end for the Cowboy defense. And I think it really does, because you look at the production that he's had the past 2 seasons, you haven't seen too many times the past few years where a quarterback is willing to throw confidently in the direction of Colby, because 9 times out of 10, he is going to make a play on the back end, to which he replied with, that defense got depth, I got no worries, they're going to be great. The defense has depth. The only problem is, and it's kind of a first world problem, we don't know what that depth looks like. We didn't get too many opportunities to see a lot of the younger guys play, because this defense was so good that those defenders were on the field most of the time.
Yeah, well, and Colby gave you a ton of confidence on that side. You knew that while there may be big plays given up or every now and again, he was seemingly always going to be one of the big reasons why they got to stop. So, and you found him up at the line of scrimmage a lot this year. He made a lot of plays moving up towards the line. He was always involved in stopping running backs too, it seemed. So it was still a big part of that defense. Yeah, he's going to be missed, no doubt. But good luck to wherever he goes. All right, let's get in some buy or sell.
Are you buying?
I'd buy that for $1.
Or are you selling?
You pick up the phone and you sell.
This is Buy or Sell on the Afternoon Sports Drive.
Make money, make money.
Buy or sell, Afternoon Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Patrick Wheeler, Zach Lancaster. All right, Zach, we actually talked about this a little bit earlier on, but I need to get a definite answer here. Buy or sell with the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah.
Big Ben's already expressed that he wants to come back, plans on it, I think. But do you buy or sell that he actually does, or does Big Ben retire after this year?
I sell that he comes back. It was just such a defining shot. The camera on him and Marquise Pouncey sitting on the sidelines all alone. There's no one around him, and they're sitting there crying. Those guys have been together for a really long time. That's if you were to look at players that are close on a team, it cannot get closer than a quarterback and his center, literally and figuratively. When you lose a playoff game, like if you're you see guys cry when this is one of their first shots, in a really long time of they got their team to the playoffs and they fell short in the title game, or they fell short in they fell short in a conference game, right? The conference championship to make it to the title game. You typically don't see veteran quarterbacks sitting on the sidelines crying over a wild card loss after they have already won Super Bowls and they've made playoffs. Now, I get that was their first playoff appearance in a couple of seasons, but I wouldn't expect, like, let's say next week Tom Brady and the Bucs lose. I wouldn't expect to see Tom Brady sitting on the sidelines crying. One, I expect Tom Brady to come back next year, but still, it had a feeling of this is it for me. I've really struggled down the stretch. I know I've expressed interest in wanting to come back, but I went out there and had one of the worst performances of my entire career, and we just got a mud hole stomped in us. I get that the thought process could be he doesn't want to, he shouldn't leave on those terms. He needs to come back and he needs to try to prove that he's still got it. I think that would be the case if he could come back and play in a couple of games. But the fact is, he's going to have to come back and play in several games. Like if he were to come back, it's not just, okay, we'll bring you back in August. We'll let you play well in a training camp game. We'll let you start the season, and leave on a high note. You're going to have to come back for 17 plus games. I don't think he has it. I think we saw how much he collapsed towards the end of the year, and we saw what he did against Cleveland. Sure, he threw for over 500 yards, but how many interceptions did he have? He just doesn't have it anymore. I get that the stats last night. Well, he's got to come back. To me, the camera with him sitting there crying just screamed definitive. I don't see him coming back.
I'm going to buy that he does, because I think that shot right there that you're talking about was more of a lot of things at once, including the whole, you know what, we were 11-0 at one point. We felt as though we had a sure sign of not just going to the postseason, but we felt like we were the easiest Super Bowl bound team there was. You know, you get the Eric Ebron talking about booking Super Bowl hotel rooms and all this stuff early in the season, and it didn't look good. But so I think that's more of what it was. It was also frustration, because Marquise Pouncey, I'm sure, feels completely responsible for that game last night, even though it wasn't all his fault. It just started off.
He only gave up 7 points.
It just started off in a really bad fashion, and they couldn't respond. So I think he does come back, because if you look at this year, he came off an injury, right? Came back this season, and he got his team to helped, I should say, get his team to 11-0 start, and that was great. I mean, they were pumped. They were like, Big Ben is, while he is struggling some at times, and he's not great with the deep ball anymore, we still know he has enough left in the tank to be our QB, and heck, we may even squeeze another Super Bowl run out of this. Not the case. But he's going to come back, because overall, Big Ben is the guy that doesn't end on that sour of a note. If it had gone differently last night in terms of maybe they'd still lost, but it was a competitive game down to the very end, it was back and forth, and Cleveland had the ball last and managed to kick a field goal or something like that, then you might see Big Ben say, you know what, I'm just going to call it that's a career for me. Had a lot of fun, had some great times, but I'm done. We gave it a good shot. No, the way that they went out last night, it's you're already going to see in this offseason, hey, I've got something left to prove, believe it or not. I don't want that to be the last memory of me in Pittsburgh. So with that being said, I think we do see him. However, like I said earlier, the Steelers would be wise to start prepping for the future at quarterback, and that means like now. And I just don't think Mason Rudolph is going to be the guy who they want to. They're not looking to rebuild here by any means with a new quarterback. Depending on what happens to Juju too, and even then, they have a couple really good receivers behind him. I mean, Chase Claypool's fantastic. If Deontay Johnson could catch the football, he'd be really good. And James Washington has proven to be a spark at times. So they have that ability. They just need the quarterback that's going to be able to get him the ball. So I buy that he comes back. I don't think it's the last we've seen of Big Ben. However, yes, he threw for 500 yards and made some decent throws down the stretch. Man, did he look labored for the most part. I mean, those interceptions, I go back and look at all 4 of them, not good. Those are uncharacteristic of Ben Roethlisberger. But we do know, as he showed last night, he could be 100 years old and still probably find a way to get 500 yards sometimes. And guess what? That's good enough to be a quarterback in the National Football League. All right. So that's my first one. What you got for me today?
We're going back to college football.
Yeah.
We kind of hit on it a little bit there towards the end of the break, but no matter who wins the national title game tonight, whether it's Alabama, whether it's Ohio State, buy or sell, it'll be a dominating performance. And you can take that multiple different ways. Yeah,
for sure. So you could even get a 3-point win by Alabama, and it could still be a pretty dominating performance. Same with Ohio State. But I'm going to sell it, because I do really think a lot of people are underestimating how competitive this was going to turn out to be a football game tonight. A lot of people, it's easy. You look at Ohio State and you compare them to what Alabama is doing. They were against SEC teams, and there was no competition. So it's easy to write off Ohio State as they may be the toughest team Alabama ends up facing this year, but still not really going to give them that much of a challenge. I don't think that's the case. I think that Day has his guys ready to go. I think they're very well prepared for this, and there's just a lot to prove in terms of, again, I also think people are underestimating the whole, you know what, we weren't going to be here. We were not going to be in a position to be here. That's big time. So Ohio State, not by any means are they going to fold over, and is this going to be a Brown score from last night in the first quarter. This is going to be a competitive ball game towards the end, so I'll sell. I don't think it's going to be domination. Alabama will find a way to get it done, but it's going to be a close game down towards the fourth quarter for sure.
Yeah, I'm gonna sell it as well, because we saw what Ohio State did against Clemson.
That's a great point. I mean, Clemson was, right, they're the team that everyone's like, hey, we know they were beat by Notre Dame, but they didn't have Trevor Lawrence, and they're not going to be beat by anybody. They didn't look like they belonged in the same stratosphere as Ohio State.
No, and that was, and that kind of null and voided out any argument that anyone had, myself included, of, well, they only had X amount of wins. The Big Ten had to change their policy. This team doesn't deserve to be in the playoffs. That's a farce. Ohio State proved that they are one of the best teams in the country. Whether they had 5 wins, 6 wins, 7 wins, or 12 wins, Ohio State deserved to be in the playoffs, and I think they proved it against Clemson. Now, with that being said, Alabama is, I think, far and away the best team in the country. So I don't think that Ohio State is going to do to Alabama what they did to Clemson. Because I think if Alabama and Clemson played, it would probably have been the same result
if not worse, right?
as Ohio State.
Yeah.
But Ohio State is good enough that I think it is going to be a really competitive game. Now there might be, like we were talking there. I think there might be a late score towards the end of the game that if Alabama were to cover that 9, and it might even go up a little bit more before kickoff. I think that it's going to be like a late game score. I don't think we're gonna go into the final 5 to 6 minutes of the game, maybe less, where Alabama is up like 14 points and Clemson is scrambling and they got an onside kick just to try to get close again. I think it, then again, I also don't think it's going to come down to whoever has the ball last. I think Alabama's going to win, and I think they're going to have the game in hand going into the final 2 to 3 minutes. And Ohio State they're going to have to try to push it, to try to score. But I don't think it'll be dominating. And I thought Pittsburgh had enough to say that they would beat Cleveland. I didn't even think it was going to be a blowout. I just thought that Pittsburgh had enough to beat Cleveland, and boy, was I wrong. So kudos to you, Levi, because you're one of like 6 people across the country that picked Cleveland to win.
That's right.
So,
he tried to tell us.
Could be wrong. I should probably call Levi here and figure out what I need to do. But yeah, I don't think it'll be dominating.
Don't give him a swole head. He's already got one. Thinking that when he beat me in the picks this year, it's the last thing he needs.
He's going to be Pawnee prancing his way in here.
We can say whatever he wants because he's not in here.
Yeah, exactly.
All right,
princess.
Yeah,
love you, Levi.
My second one. Yeah, we love you. My second one for you. So the Seahawks were maybe one of the other surprises in these games this weekend because not only did they get beat by the Rams, but they didn't even show up. It was just embarrassing. That whole game was bad. Like Jared Goff he wasn't starting that game, but when Wofford took a shot to the neck, he had to come in, and Goff could barely play because he just had surgery on his thumb like 12 days prior. He still had pins in his thumb, his throwing thumb, by the way, which is incredible. He was even out there. With that being said, the Seahawks didn't take advantage. They could not do anything against that Rams defense. And Chris Carson involved. I think he finished with 74 yards, something like that on the ground. He is a free agent this upcoming season, this upcoming new year, in the National Football League. Buy or sell that he will re-sign with the Seahawks, or are we going to see Chris Carson on a new team?
That's a good one, because when you look at Chris Carson, doesn't he just scream Seattle running back?
Yeah, and he's 27, by the way. So
I don't know. That's tough, because I think there'd be a lot of teams that would be willing to pay Chris Carson a really good amount of money for a couple of good seasons, because I think Chris still has some left in the tank. We saw him deal with multiple injuries throughout the year. We've seen Chris deal with multiple injuries the past couple of years. So I think injuries are an issue moving forward, and I'm sure his age doesn't play well into it. But what was it? Buy that he stays or buy that he goes?
Buy that he stays with Seattle.
Yeah, I'll buy that he sticks with Seattle. I don't know, because I don't know if Seattle has enough to. I know they dealt with some injuries, but midway through the year, when Russell Wilson started to struggle a little bit, I didn't really have any confidence that Seattle was going to make a push for a Super Bowl. And unless they make some changes, I don't think it's going to be that way next year either. So I could see Carson leaving for a better situation, because I think there will be teams that contact him, say, hey, listen, we know what Seattle's thinking about offering you. We can offer you this. And I think Chris could the next couple of years make some really, really good money. But I just have a feeling that Chris is just a Seattle Seahawk.
Yeah.
So I'll buy it.
He seems like the type of guy that would be there for his career.
Yeah.
The thing is, with Chris Carson, he's never had, believe it or not, he's never had a 16-game season under his belt because he can't stay healthy. And that's in part to the running back that he is.
I think that goes back to college, too.
Yeah,
I don't think he had full seasons at Oklahoma State.
Mm-hmm. And that's the style of running back that he's your battering ram, take on contact, and with that comes some injuries at times. This year, it was the foot that bothered him for the most part. It was a weird year for Chris Carson, by the way.
Yeah.
The second half of the season, get this too, probably surprising to some people, he never in the second half did not have a game with 20 carries or a game with over 100 yards on the ground. That's not Chris Carson style. He wasn't able to be the workhorse. Carlos Hyde was taking some of his snaps away, was feeding into that. The thing that I've seen Seahawks fans, particularly today on social media, freaking out about, and I understand it, is after this loss, Pete Carroll comes out and says, oh, by the way, our focus for 2021 is going to be the run game. And we're going to run it's like, wait a second. In the first half, you didn't do that. You let Russ cook. That was the whole thing. And he was a sure MVP.
Yeah.
He was playing out of his mind. And then he started throwing interceptions, and all of a sudden the confidence went away. And Pete Carroll went back to what he usually does, and that was we're going to stay run heavy. And it didn't allow Russell Wilson to do anything, and turned into an absolute disaster. I mean, they looked so uncomfortable yesterday. It was just unbelievable what we've seen in that turnaround the second half. So Chris Carson, that's the thing. He's not going to – no team is going to be willing to overpay for him because they know that, first of all, he can't stay healthy. And you know what else? While he's talented, they've seen a lot of running backs like him in the league before that are not going to bring enough production to be worth that price tag. So if he wants to stay with Seattle, it's going to have to be an agreement on price, plain and simple. Can he feel like he's getting enough money to stick around for another year or two with this organization? Because I think Seattle's good enough. I really do. They need help on the defensive side, but I think they're good, and the coaching obviously is an issue. But I think they have a good enough squad to be competitive every single year, and they have been. Russell Wilson gives you that opportunity. So buy or sell that he stays with them. I'm going to sell it. I think he finds a new home because you may get some team that offers him a better price than what Seattle does, and that's probably going to be the deciding factor.
And probably a better chance of doing well in the playoffs. Maybe
that too, because his services are still needed in the NFL. There's no doubt about that. But the fact that he has not been able to stay healthy once in his career is a big red flag to a lot of teams, and they've seen it. I mean, look at what happened with Zeke. Right, you're not going to overpay for a running back anymore, and especially one Chris Carson who's been in the league long enough. It's not like he's just still in his prime, for instance. He's got a lot of wear and tear. So I think he goes somewhere else. I think we see him on another team. He's still one of my most favorite backs to watch run the football, but especially when he's healthy. Because he did give you that workhorse style when he was healthy. Unfortunately, I haven't seen that in a while. But wherever he lands, he's going to be a good story, I think, to be able to help a team come back or be able to help that position come back for a team. When we come back here, or you have one more, we'll give you your second one when we come back. I know, we gotta cut it off. As well as, I know everyone's dying, right? The Ravens won. And it's all Tom already gave me the business.
The first thing he said to you when you got off air.
Oh, I've already heard it. Already heard it from a multitude of people. Oh, what are you gonna say now?
I give Lamar Jackson a lot of credit. I think finally getting that playoff win, fantastic. He didn't do it as a throwing quarterback, which is your argument. Your argument is throwing quarterback. In terms of running quarterback, Lamar Jackson, great performance.
Big time.
Throwing quarterback, suspect.
Yeah, we're going to get your buy or sell, and then I'm going to find you. Everyone's going to find out if I give him credit or not. We'll see.
I think you have to.
Well, we'll see. Do I? We'll see. It's coming up.
I don't wanna wait for our lives to be over. You have it, but you take it how you left it. This is give and take. Take your time, take me under. I wanna know, but you show me what I'm missing. In the plane down in Southern California, running in the streets all day. I guess some of us just gotta learn the hard way. Don't give a damn what nobody gotta say. We can sell it now. I don't wanna wait for our lives to be over. If it happened now,
We're On the afternoon sports drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Patrick Wheeler, Zach Lancaster. We're finishing up buy or sell. All right, Zach, what's that big number 2 you got for me?
That was a bit loud. So we saw a win on Saturday. Oklahoma State went up to Manhattan in a rather weird situation, and like the women's team, we got a Big 12 announcement that game against Kansas State has been postponed. So COVID is obviously an issue in Manhattan. 6 starting players, two walk-ons. Oklahoma State got the W. So, I mentioned it earlier that they struggled against Kansas State, and it seems like under Mike Boynton the teams play to their level of competition, and that's not an indictment. That's just it. Just seems what it is. They've been able to beat Kansas State, or they've been able to beat Kansas 3 out of the last 4 times in Stillwater, 4 out of the last 7 games in Stillwater. Oklahoma State figures it out. Cade Cunningham has a career day against KU, buy or sell.
So his high, I think, career high 25. I want to say
something mid to upper 20s.
Yeah. I'm gonna sell.
Well, and that shouldn't. It doesn't necessarily
just
have
points,
to be points.
right?
No, it could be anything.
Right.
Just across the board.
Yeah, I'm gonna sell because Kansas. Look, you go back to what Bob Huggins managed to do, and he at the end of that game, especially, we wasn't gonna let Cade Cunningham single-handedly beat them. Bill Self isn't gonna do that either.
29.
29. That's right. Okay.
29.
As much as I have disdain for Bill Self over the years at Kansas, I give credit where it's due here, and he's not gonna let that happen. So I think Cade plays obviously way better than the 5 points he managed to put in against Kansas State. And the thing about that is, if you watch that game, yeah, he was with the 5 points, but he wasn't throwing up like really bad shots, like trying to force the action too much. He wasn't really. He was frustrated, obviously, but he wasn't like, oh my gosh, if I don't score, what's going to happen? No. He was letting everything come to him a little bit there. This is a game though in Kansas, and I'm preaching it every single week until it finally happens. He's got to start out hot. That means take over the ball game early, or at least be
double-digit first half.
Yeah,
points.
just like be really impactful early in this game. Yeah. And he's done that passing the ball, he's done that rebounding at times and defending at times, but scoring the basketball, do that early. And I think that's a coaching thing too. Let's get him open. Let's make plays to get him some easy looks to start off. Get him in a rhythm. You get Cade in a rhythm, and look, if you just think about what it takes to get him some space and get open, it doesn't take a lot.
No.
And he creates a lot of it himself. So that's going to have to happen in this game against Kansas for them to win this ball game. So I'll sell that it's a career day, but he's going to be much more impactful than he was against Kansas State if they're going to win.
Yeah, I'm going to buy it because I think he has to have a big game. Like, if Cade has a game that he did against Kansas State, I don't think Oklahoma State's in the ball game. You can't go out there and against Kansas State and put up 5 points, and like the 2 rebounds was good, and he only had 2. He only had 2 fouls, so that's good. Put up 5 assists, that's a good number, but 5 points, that's not going to be enough to get it done against Kansas. You look at what he's done throughout the year. I mean, he opens up his career with a double-double. He gets close to a double-double against West Virginia, and I think if he doesn't pick up that 5th foul, I think he probably gets that 10th rebound. I'm not saying that Cade's going to go out and he's going to score 26 points and have 14 rebounds and 9 assists, but I think you're going to see Cade. I think you're going to see him past that average. He's averaging 17.8 points a game right now. I'd be curious to see where that is in terms of Big 12. I haven't seen that. He was leading it with 19.1.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think Cade, he gets more than that 17.8. I think he probably gets really close to the 10 rebounds. I think he has a similar game that he did against West Virginia, just because I think he has to. But with that being said, let's say Bill Self is able, Bill Self is like Bob Huggins in the sense that he knows how to shut down a really good player because he has nothing but really good players. So he knows how to shut that down. If that happens, let's say Cade has 14 points, which is still like, if you're just a normal guy, man, you'd kill for 14 points in a game. But let's say Cade has a teen performance, less than 16 points. This team, like I said, it seems to play to its competition. I think you're going to see a career-esque type game from Isaac Likely. I think you're going to see Rondell Walker play really well. I think you're going to see Avery Anderson play really well. I think you're going to see a pretty good game from M.A. I think you'll see a decent game from Caleb Boone. So if, in fact, they're not able to have Cade put up 25, 30 points, I think you can see that production picked up somewhere else. So I'll buy it because I do think not the career day in every single category, but I think you're going to see more rebounds than you have. I think you're going to see quite a few points. I think in terms of assists, I think you're going to see a lot there if he can stay out of foul trouble. That'll be the parameter.
Yep, that's a big thing. I hope he has a big time game for sure on tomorrow. Let's go to the phone line. Caller, you're on the Afternoon Sports Drive.
Hey, on the same subject, guys. When the biggest thing to me, and what they don't try to do, they have in the past, they don't have that dominant post presence. And, if you look at Caleb Boone, he struggled against the big kid from TCU, who's not a great player, but he's big and he takes up space. He struggled against, obviously, Culver, who is a really good college basketball player. And, Kansas doesn't really have that like they've had in the past. I mean, they arguably had maybe the best college. It didn't translate to the NBA, I don't think, but best college center in basketball last year. And so now they're just not the same at that position. And one of our weaknesses, obviously, has been we've been giving up way too many offensive rebounds. And quite frankly, for a while, we were giving them up against Kansas State. If you guys just break down, not by position, but say the starting five for each team and say, okay, who's got the best player? Does Kansas have the best player or Oklahoma State has the best player? And then if you go to that second position, and so let's say you say Cunningham's one and that star, I can't think of his name, Kansas, the second best player. Then if you go, who's the third best player? I would say it was Likely. And so what I'm saying is I think talent-wise, we're really close to this Kansas team. What the problem I've seen with this team is that you don't necessarily get the same performance from the younger players or the transfer from game to game. Like Bryce Williams played 6 minutes, didn't score the last game. Well, he's been pretty good the previous two. Well, you go a few games back from that, and our sophomore guard from Texas had 2 really good games, and then he had a goose egg, and then he had 12 against K-State, but he was 3 for 11 from the field. So I think it's a young team that's got to find, if they can find their consistency and not let up, not be impressed with themselves when they get up 19 on a good team, I think this team could really kickstart a season. I'm predicting, I'm not saying a lopsided win. I'm just saying I think Oklahoma State, unless it's going to go out and win this game 6 to 8 points tomorrow night.
Yeah,
Kansas, and last comment, then I'll shut up. I mean, Kansas has not awed me this year. There's nothing about their performance. I know they're 8-1 or 8, whatever they are. I'm saying, yeah, they're a good team, but they are not the Kansas that we from the last 5 or 6 years.
No, you look at what they did over the weekend. They narrowly escaped Oklahoma at home, 63-59. Kansas is, I believe, 10-2 on the year. Now they're still ranked 6th in the country. This is still a really good Kansas team. This isn't the same Kansas team that we've seen Bill Self trot out there. So in terms of that, yes. And Oklahoma State has had a lot of success against those really good Kansas teams. They have a lot of success against Kansas teams at home, which is what you get. You get a Kansas at home, and it's not as good as we saw last year. Now, I agree with what you're saying with some of the younger guys and even some of the older guys. This has been an inconsistent team. But with that being said, I think they play to the level of the competition. Barely beat Wichita State. Barely beat ORU, barely beat a Texas Southern team. You barely beat a Kansas State team. I get that they hit their last 13 buckets and they won by 16 points, but they should have been up by 16 going into the half. They should have just obliterated that Kansas State team. That's why I'm somewhat confident tomorrow. Now, you look at it right now, Kansas is 2.5 points on Oklahoma State right now, which is a hell of a lot closer than I expected.
Me too.
I expected 5, 6 maybe, but they're only 2.5 right now.
That's interesting.
Now we've still got almost 26 hours to tip off, but I give a lot of credit to this Oklahoma State team. I think they're going to play up to the level of Kansas.
Yeah, they will. In this game, this is a Kansas team that, as you said, and as caller said, not like super elite like they have been. We know that. And Oklahoma State is talented enough to absolutely compete, and they could win this game. I mean, I don't think there's just a lot of Oklahoma State fans I don't think would be just this giant shock if they actually did win. Now, McCormick isn't Azubuike by any means,
right?
But and then that's where my worry is. That's what I said to open the show. That so far this season, big men have had field days against Oklahoma State. They feast down there because no one has showed up to stop. Caleb Boone hasn't played well. Moncrief has been iffy. There hasn't been anybody that's been able to stop that. So that's where my worry is, because he's had a couple of good games back-to-back here. They've been able to get him going a little bit, and everything points to him staying hot against Oklahoma State. So I certainly have my worries. But yes, this is an inconsistent team. However, they trot out the talent, I truly believe, to stay competitive against pretty much any. There's a lot of teams in the country they could stay competitive against, maybe minus Gonzaga, and I'd be bullish on Baylor for sure. But they would definitely give some other teams some games, no doubt.
I think we're pretty much on the same page. I think the last comment I'll get off, because I think this is really an important win. Because I think it's the type, if you can win this game, it'll help. It takes some of that horrible taste from West Virginia and TCU, but especially West Virginia, out of your mouth. And I think that we could then hopefully turn that into a little bit of a run. I mean, if you beat Tech on the road and beat Kansas at home, and you feel like you should have beat West Virginia, you should be able to build on that and go on a run. Because there's an Iowa State, Kansas State. I know we got to go back to TCU, guys, but I got a feeling that there'll be a lot of venom in that game. There's a lot of winnable games. If we could get this one, I think Oklahoma State then can look at maybe getting to the 10-win mark in the conference. So anyway, I think it's a huge game. I feel like I'm predicting we're going to win this game, and if we don't win it, I think the NCAA tournament's going to be tough. Still gets doable, but it's going to be tough. But thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate the phone call.
Yeah, it's a big-time game, no doubt. And like I said, you look at the rest of the schedule after this, it's Kansas, it's Oklahoma, and guess what? It's Baylor. I mean, you have to it's coming down the pipe here. You got a lot of home games coming up as well. But, man, the schedule tightens up, and it's going to be tough, no doubt. But this is where Oklahoma State proves whether they have the ability to be a tournament team, because guess what? These early losses in the Big 12, they dug themselves a bit of a hole here. Yeah. This is not an easy way to get out of it by any means. When we come back here on the Afternoon Sports Drive, I'll tell you what you learned. I'll tell you about the Ravens, Titans, Lamar Jackson, all coming up here on the Afternoon Sports Drive.
Feel like I'm gonna puke, cause my taxes are due. Do my password begin with a 1 or a 2? Been a hell of a
Welcome back. Afternoon Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Patrick Wheeler, Zach Lancaster. Get ready to put a bow on it today. All right, so, and I'm sure we'll get more into this in the week. I know we will, I should say, because
we will,
because Tom's going to be on. So I mean, it's
what a yard bird.
It's coming, it's coming down the pipe. Ravens, Titans, and here we go. And I've already seen it immediately. Immediately, the game ended. Oh my gosh, all these haters can stop saying Lamar Jackson can't win a playoff game, and it was dumb to say that in the first place because he's only been in the league for a few years. And my response, because I've said that multiple times, is, hey, one of the knocks is he hasn't won a playoff game. Yeah. And all of a sudden, this argument comes out after the game that was ignorant to say because he's so young and so new in the league. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, I'm sorry. I didn't realize that we were supposed to hold elite athletes to such a low standard. That's my fault. I'm sorry for criticizing the freaking league MVP for not being able to win a playoff game. He won the MVP last year. And all of a sudden, everyone's got to act like it's this huge deal that he can't win the playoff.
First of all, how dare you?
Right, how dare me, first of all. Yeah. But do you see how ridiculous that sounds? Okay, so let me just go ahead and chop that one off. He completely, the bed in his first 2 playoff games. And he nearly, look, this one started off looking like, and I know Ravens fans had to be thinking, oh boy, here we go again. Ravens fans are the ones that I believe if you put the truth serum in a lot of them, they would be like, yeah, I've got my worries about the future with Lamar Jackson because there's issues throwing the football. But they would never show that. It's always, we're going to win the game no matter what happens because it's Lamar Jackson. And they were down. The Titans were up 10-0. The first drive looked incredible. They were moving the ball, not great on the ground to start, but A.J. Brown is a freak of nature and was making plays, and they scored a touchdown and looked awesome. Great throw by Ryan Tannehill. And you're thinking, wow, the Titans, here we go. They did it last year to the Ravens, here we go. And then everything just went down the drain. Here's where I give Lamar Jackson his credit, because I will give it where it's due. Yeah, look, great that he won a playoff game. Awesome. Good for him to get that monkey off the back, because I'm sure it was a heavy one. He runs the ball better than a lot of people in the NFL. Like, when he is hitting those holes, they're very slim, too. And he's so fast. The speed he has as a quarterback position is really incredible. But he didn't throw the ball that well again. And then that's how you beat the Ravens. We know that now. The way to beat the Ravens, you jump out to a lead and you force them to throw it to catch up because they will make mistakes doing that. It's a nice little mixture for them. Lamar Jackson, not great at throwing the football, especially not deep. They don't have weapons, right? And the play calls aren't good. They don't have anybody to throw the football to. Mark Andrews is, to me, the best receiver. He's better than Hollywood Brown on that team. Marquise Brown has done very few things besides show off his speed that have made me think he's going to be a good receiver in the NFL before it's all said and done. So, with all that being said, I really like watching Lamar Jackson. I don't hate on him, believe it or not. I do critique him where I think it's fair, because at some point, and especially here in these playoffs, you're going to have to throw the ball to win the game. And I think it's coming against the Bills. You can't look, that's the thing in this game, too. Give the Ravens credit defensively. They held Derrick Henry, who looks like he's going to pop off for 200 a game, to around 40 yards. That's incredible. They stopped the game plan, and the Titans weren't good enough to come back and throw the football themselves. Ryan Tannehill wasn't able to solely win the game with his arm. He throws the pick at the end of the game. By the way, Marcus Peters, I just want to say this. He made the interception. As a Chiefs fan, I think I speak for a lot of Chiefs fans here. Don't miss Marcus Peters at all. That dude, he's just a problem. But when it comes to this game with the Titans, again, I go back to coaching. Mike Vrabel. Dude, we talked about bad decision on 4th down.
Poo-pooed the bed.
This is completely different because you have the arguably best running back, especially one you needed 2 yards. 4th and 2, and you're on the Ravens 40-yard line. And you in the fourth quarter, you're down and you punt the football? Am I missing something here? It was something wrong with Derrick Henry where he couldn't. I know he was getting stuffed all game, but 2 yards. You put in your extra, you put in your big package, jumbo package, you throw your fullback in there. Heck, Ryan Tannehill blocks.
Yeah.
And you get 2 yards and you keep going. And I think that right there was worse of a decision and costing the game more so than Mike Tomlin's later in the night. That was absolutely terrible. So a lot of things went right for the Ravens to win this game. Lamar Jackson, freak on the ground. Absolute freak on the ground. But let's stop acting like, and that's the thing I told you, ever since Bill Polian, when he came in the league, said, oh my gosh, Lamar Jackson, would you think about becoming a wide receiver? It set everybody off. It gave the entire Ravens franchise everything they needed to say. We got the backs against the wall. We got the target on our back. Nobody believes in Lamar Jackson. They think he should play a different position, which wasn't a crazy question in the first place. It actually made sense if you think about it with what he can do with the football. So it's unbelievable. I'll give him credit. But my goodness, and everybody understands this, the Ravens are in trouble when it comes to throwing the football, especially if it means to win a game.
So Lamar Jackson went 17 of 24 for 179 yards. For those of you that need help, that's 7.5 yards per completion. I needed that help. I'm speaking to myself. No touchdowns, 1 interception. Is Lamar Jackson one of the best football players in the NFL? Yes. In terms of football players, Lamar Jackson is one of the best. He's one of the most athletic. He's one of the biggest freaks of natures. He's really, really good. Is he a great quarterback? Probably not.
Throwing quarterback?
There you go.
Definitely not. That's the thing. Like, running the football,
he's so good.
And guess what? You're going to run into games against teams that are so susceptible to that. And if they can't answer on the other end throwing the football, you're going to win ball games, man.
Yeah.
And it just so happened to be in the postseason. So I'm not going to give Lamar credit. Solely give him credit for winning this game.
No.
He was a big part of it. But the defense shutting. If Derrick Henry goes for 160, 170, what he's used to in that game, they don't lose that game.
No.
And they did a great job. You know, the Titans took them to overtime in the regular season and beat them in overtime. It was a tight one there. And I give credit for the Ravens coming back, and everyone's freaking out. You know, oh, my gosh, they danced on the field after the interception, the disrespect. Look, the Titans did it to them earlier in the year.
Yeah, they did.
Let's not get started.
There was
with
a
that.
lot more Titans on the logo.
It's a little bit of revenge. That's not really a huge deal. So that's where I am, though, with Lamar Jackson. And I don't hate on him, but I do find it extremely annoying. And it's not just the fans. ESPN, Bleacher Report, any national publication of sports rides this dude like he's the next LeBron James, and they feel like they gotta, everything's so against Lamar Jackson. Like, no, we all want him to succeed. Like, I want him to succeed. But until he does, throwing the football, we're not going to act like he is this all-time great quarterback in the league. So I'll give him credit. Everybody heard it. He did a great job, but not throwing the football. All right, let's get to what we learned.
The day is coming to an end. Time to find out if these two got any smarter.
The question is, what did you learn?
Let's find out what the guys learned today on the afternoon sports drive.
Well, I learned something today.
All right, so what I learned, Zach, is as if we didn't have enough news out of the National Football League.
Yeah.
Doug Pederson got the axe today, and the Philadelphia Eagles said goodbye to their head coach, Doug Pederson. And it was interesting because that question was posed to, on that Sunday night game against the Washington football team, was posed to Chris Collinsworth. And Al Michaels is like, hey, do you think he'll be back? And he goes, yeah, I think he'll be back. You know, he won a Super Bowl 3 years ago. They're not going to get rid of him. But little did we know he was going to seemingly throw the game with the quarterback debacle that he ended up putting out there against the Washington football team. And I think that what that tells me is that there were talks, was the ownership in on this? I don't think they were. I think this was a situation where he acted impulsively and thought to himself, you know what? It pushes the argument that there was a little bit here to try to not let the New York Giants in the playoffs, right? A little bit. As if anyone needed the conspiracy theorists, like...
Well, then you get the excuse coming out, him saying that he didn't like being told what to do.
Yeah.
I hate to say it, bud, but that's called having a boss.
You are an employee of an organization.
Yeah, you're not the owner.
Yeah.
Even if you were the GM, guess what? You still got someone over you.
Yeah. This year was a disaster. 4-11. He finishes 42-37-1 in 5 seasons, which a winning record. One of them was a Super Bowl. And that was a weird year. You had Nick Foles kind of come out of nowhere, and he got the job done. But everything that could go wrong for the Eagles went wrong. Like Carson Wentz fell apart this year. Zach Ertz is done. He was one of the best tight ends in the league, and he's done. Yes, Jalen Hurts looked good at times, but he provided a minimal spark. So I think they want to get somebody in there with Jalen Hurts who can at least attempt to make this a team with a exciting young quarterback. Again, we go back to throwing the football. Jalen Hurts got to get better at that here in year 2 for sure. They need to get someone they can trust.
Lincoln Riley go to Philadelphia?
Yeah, right. Get him back in there. We can get it done. Yeah, you heard it here first, right? Well, the NFC East, to me, is still extremely up for grabs. And that's even if the Cowboys sign Dak Prescott.
All you have to do is play halfway decent.
That's right.
And you'll win a banner.
You need 6 wins.
Good God.
You need 6 wins. Can we get a coach that will give us 6 wins? And Doug Pederson didn't do that this year. So it surprised me a little bit. But the ultimate reason for me is, again, I feel like the franchise was like, wow, we did not see that coming from Doug Pederson in the game and weren't aware, and we're not going to let that ever happen again.
A little bit of sad news for mine. End of an era. Alex Trebek passed back in November.
Yeah.
Super sad. Today is the first episode the first new episode without Alex Trebek being the host. Today,
man.
Ken Jennings starts his fill-in role. He's the first of a series of guest hosts over the course of the next season. So I'm in the camp that I don't know if you can replace him. I feel like, personally, I feel that this show, you continue with your guest hosts throughout the rest of this year, because there could be some really memorable guest hosts. Obviously, Ken Jennings. There's 2 or 3 other former champions that would probably do really, really well, but I feel like once this season is over, you can't replace Alex Trebek.
He was like
long-term.
it's like when Bob Barker was done with Price is Right.
Yeah.
It just wasn't the same.
It's
right?
weird now. It almost feels gimmicky.
Yeah.
I know that the Jeopardy for a lot of kids was some solace, and you learn a lot. I personally would love to see 2 really smarties, and you put some average Joe on the end and see how many he can get.
My favorite is because Alex Trebek was awesome. Like
so good.
He was super funny, charismatic, and then he was a savage too.
Oh,
like he would, and especially you would see it on sports questions. You would always.
What do you knew that answer?
You would always have
not even a guess.
The typical, like if you said the word nerd, those people would be like, we're nerds in the terms of we know everything, but we're really
it was
not sports people.
Thursday or Friday, Chris Collinsworth.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
And he was like, really? Not even a guess?
They said this broadcaster appears without Michaels on Sunday night.
Was a former NFL receiver, and he's like, really?
Crickets.
Not even a guess?
Yeah, that was too good.
Chris Collinsworth.
Right, that happened all the time,
man.
and he would always call him out
so
on
good.
it. Hilarious.
But yeah, today, and I've got it recording. I've had a Jeopardy recording for a while, and today is the first episode where Ken Jennings is in that guest role as host. So.
Yeah,
that's the end of an era.
For sure. Alex Trebek was awesome, man. He is certainly
legend.
one of those guys that won't be replaced.
No,
ever.
and I don't think you can. I get maybe continuing to air Jeopardy because it's a moneymaker and people are going to watch it, but it's just not going to have the same feel.
The Mount Rushmore of game show hosts.
Alex Trebek, number 1.
Alex Trebek for me.
And I think you have to have Bob Barker.
Bob Barker for me.
You know what? This is simply a generational thing because I grew up with it. Who Wants to Be a Millionaire with Regis Philbin was so good.
Yeah, he was good.
It was so good. But I don't watch a ton of game shows, so it was a reality show, game show, so why not stick Joe Rogan up there?
Yeah, okay.
For Fear Factor?
Fear Factor was good.
Oh,
that was
Lord.
classic.
Man.
I would go those 2, Bob Barker and Trebek. Probably Pat Sajak.
Okay, yeah, I forgot about him. Pat Sajak up there.
And
for
honestly, this could be debatable.
Yeah.
But I think I would go ahead and throw Steve Harvey up there. I love Steve Harvey on Family Feud.
He's good. He's one of the better ones.
So good.
Yeah.
I think it might be, maybe some people argue that's a little too soon. But
I think you have to. It's kind of like inducting current head coaches into the Hall of Fame.
You got to wait till he retires, right?
But if you have X amount of years or X amount of wins or X amount of episodes, I feel like you qualify.
That's right.
So maybe give Harvey another 2 or 3 years, and then you can stick him up there while he's still alive.
That's fair.
Or still going, not retired.
You just never know what you're going to get on the afternoon sports drive. How about game host?
Like tonight,
Mount Rushmore.
We're making homemade chicken enchiladas. Pretty jazzed about that.
Wow, so you got to get out of here. That's solid.
I got to go.
All right. That's the afternoon sports drive here on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network.
Shameless plug. Marshall Levinson and I, we are recording the second episode of the Pokes Report podcast, and you can find that on pokesreport.com sometime tomorrow.
There you go. Make sure you check out that and look out for it as well. That's Zach Lancaster. I'm Patrick Wheeler. Everybody enjoy the National Championship game tonight. Enjoy your evenings. We'll be back here tomorrow, back at 3 o'clock. Everybody have a great day.